It's time. They say the correct number of bikes is n+1. N being how many bikes you have, and +1 being getting a new bike. Unfortunately, I'm under strict instructions that the correct amount of bikes for me is actually n, which put simply means if I'm gonna buy a bike, I've got to sell a bike. Come with me on a journey to see if we can find my beloved Bianchi a new home. Okay, let's start with the bike I'm looking to sell. It's a 2020 Bianchi Sprint Disc. This was my first road bike. Well, unless you count this one. It comes with a full Ultegra drivetrain and all the original components, except for the seat post and saddle, which is something that I replaced. I was completely enchanted by the idea of having an Italian bike, and as a first bike, this met all of my needs. But it's time for it to find a new home and be a wonderful first bike for somebody else. When you do list your bike, it is really important that you get the make and the model right, but also the year. There can be quite significant differences between the bikes from one year to the next. A great resource that I've found for this purpose is bicyclebluebooks.com. It's a fantastic website that lets you look up make, model and year of bikes, and it gives you a sense of what is included on that bike just to double check that it's yours, but it also gives you a valuation based on the condition of the bike. Don't forget to take note of the size of your bike. There is no point in a buyer looking at a bike that's not going to fit them. Save yourself some questions and make sure you add the bike size. Different brands measure their bikes in different ways. Some companies use it as simple as a small, medium and large. Others are going to use the more traditional measurement 52, 56, 58. This measurement is the measurement of the top tube. When in doubt, just measure it. The distance from here to here is the size of this bike. My Bianchi is a 58. Some Sundays are the great Sydney changeover. Everybody who lives up north heads down south to try some of the southern routes, and everybody who lives in the city heads up north for some of the climbs. It's nice to have those options. When you start preparing your bike to list, there's some pretty basic maintenance things that you can do to get it ready for sale. Have a look over your bike at things like bar tape, brake pads, chain, cassette. These are all things that you can look at in terms of maintenance and see if they need a refresh before you sell. If you're not terribly mechanically inclined, just take it down to your local bike shop. They'll be able to give it a tune-up or a service as it's necessary and give you an idea of any parts that you may have to buy to bring it up to spec. Don't feel like you have to replace everything though. Sometimes it's just as good for you to be able to detail the things that are actually going to need some attention. If the chain's coming up for replacement, if the tyres are running low on tread, just letting the purchaser know that these things might be something they're up for in the near term is a valuable asset to any listing. Once you're ready though, don't forget, give your bike a good wash, make it all shiny and clean, and get some good photos. The more detailed the photos, the better it's going to be for a buyer. I think that disclosure is one of the most important things when it comes to selling a bike. And what I mean is just letting the buyer know the history of the bike, letting the buyer know what's happened to the bike. The first question that you're going to get from a prospective buyer is, has it been dropped or has it been crashed? These things are not the end of the world if your bike has had either, but a prospective buyer is just looking to avoid any hidden damage or any undisclosed detail that might impact the longevity of the bike. This topic becomes even more sensitive the more of your bike that is built with carbon fibre. In the case of my Bianchi that I'm selling here, yes, it has been crashed. On a local ride after hitting a pothole, my hands popped off the handlebars and I laid the bike down on its left-hand side. The bulk of the impact went through the handlebars, the saddle, and unfortunately my shoulder and hip. I've had the bike checked over by 2 mechanics and it's been given the all clear. Plus, I've ridden over 2,000 kilometers since this crash, including the 2022 Barrel Classic. I am confident that there are no underlying issues with this bike that can be related to the crash that I had with it. When it comes to selling your bike, obviously this long-winded narrative of any crashes it's had is probably not necessary, but it's the kind of conversation you should be prepared to have with a prospective buyer. When it comes to actually listing your bike, there are far less options than what it seems. Word of mouth is one option. If you happen to know anyone in your circle, maybe in your riding group, who needs a bike, that's a good place to start. An alternative is to reach out to your mechanic or maybe your local bike shop. It feels like bike exchange is something that you could use, but it's not really. It doesn't cater for private sales. So you have to be a bike shop or a bike retailer to actually be able to utilize bike exchange. Again, if you speak to your local bike shop, they may be happy to take secondhand bikes to be able to put onto bike exchange. So what this really leaves is online marketplaces. You can go for something like eBay or Gumtree, but the problem there is you're not really tapping into the right market. People who are looking to buy bikes, especially high-end road bikes, are typically not looking on those sites. So what are we left with? Facebook, really. Facebook Marketplace tends to be your best option when it comes to selling your bike. Now, listing just in general is probably a good place to start, but my recommendation to you would be to seek out some local groups for bike sales. I'm based in Sydney. There are some Sydney bike sales, Sydney Bikes Only. There are a couple of great groups that are going to connect you to people who are keeping an eye on the market. This is your best way to get some traction on Facebook Marketplace. But seller beware. Facebook Marketplace can be fraught with scammers. Be very careful when you're listing. When somebody's going to come and offer you exactly what you're asking for without asking any questions, be skeptical. Avoid anybody who's trying to pay with Pay ID or any of those known scams that exist inside of the platform. Definitely run the other way if someone's going to send their brother to pick up the bike. Some buyers are going to look to use things like PayPal. This is a fine approach, but obviously have a good conversation with them first. You don't want to get into a situation where people are claiming money back from you after a sale. A simple rule of thumb is, if it feels too good to be true, then it probably is. Generally, your best bet is to just have a conversation with the person. You'll be able to relate to them pretty quickly, and ideally they're going to be asking some on-point questions. This will give you a good sense of confidence to go ahead with the transaction. Take advantage of the local geography feature inside of Facebook Marketplace. The best case scenario is that you can have someone from your local area come, inspect the bike, and pay cash when they take it home with them. It's the best outcome for everybody. Maybe somebody should start a side of the road park up in Centennial Park. Bring your second-hand bike. It's kind of like cars on the side of the road. Pull up and buy it if you want. Might be something there. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. I am actually selling my bike. So my Bianchi will be listed up on Facebook Marketplace in Sydney, Australia very soon. I'll be sure to drop a link in the description for the listing. Hopefully you found these tips for listing or buying bikes online helpful, but hopefully some of the research and experience that I've had here is going to be of value to you when maybe you're selling a bike or even if you're buying a bike. Are there any important tips for selling a bike that I've forgotten here? What has your experience been like in selling bikes online? Do you use Marketplace? Do you use something else? Any insights that you might have to share, please drop them in the comments. Other than that, folks, until next time, see ya!